G'day, I'm Jamie Mackay, host of The Country and a real fan and frequenter of Forsyth Bar Stadium. It's an honour to be asked to host this Q&A panel for the team at Dunedin Venues and for all you guys who make it happen. That's the paid up members. Today's panel features two go-to guys I use frequently on The Country. Former chairman of Forsyth Bar and one of the nation's great benefactors, Sir Eon Edgar, and one of the country's best money minds, independent economist, Cameron Bagri. Let's get on with the show. We'll get the COVID-19 bad stuff out of the way first, and then we're going to focus on some of the positives and opportunities that could present themselves. Age before beauty. So firstly, you, Sir Eon, let's put this economic downturn into some sort of historic perspective. Are the most significant events since the Great Depression?
It's certainly, well, nowhere near as significant as World War One and World War Two, where, World War Two, 75 million people died. So we do have to put it in perspective, but certainly in an economic sense, outside the wars, even the Korean War, we lost 5 million people. So you do have to put these things in perspective. But it's certainly a lot worse than the global financial crisis, and probably the Depression, Great Depression does compare. So yeah, no, very significant.
Cameron, could it potentially even be worse than the Great Depression?
No, I don't think it'll be worse than the Great Depression, because you've got to remember that the Great Depression was year after year after year of your economy contracting. What we're facing with the current great lockdown is a lot more of a hit up front, but things are going to start to improve in a couple of weeks because we're going down through the lockdown levels. Unfortunately, it's not going to seem like much of an improvement because the level of activity is going to be still helplessly low. It's worth bearing in mind that at alert level 1, the economy is going to be 96% operational. That means GDP is down about 4%. Now, that's worse than what we experienced during the global financial crisis. Now, the reality is we're aspiring to get to alert level 1 pretty quickly, but we're going to be in alert level 1, I think, for a long time. So I'm telling people, look, think about a sharp improvement over the back 6 months of this year. It's not going to feel like too much of an improvement, but there's going to be a bit of 1987 to 1992 out the other side in 2021 and 2022.
Eon, how do you rate the government's handling of the lockdown thus far? For instance, let's start with the wage subsidy. For mine, I think you'd have to declare it a success.
Oh, I think it was very well done, very efficient, and certainly helped a lot of companies make sensible decisions on their downsizing. So big tick for that. I think they probably weren't quick enough to close the borders, as we now know. But having done that, I think they've done a very good job. But they now need to get down to level 2 ASAP and hopefully down to level 1 not long thereafter.
Cameron?
Yeah, I'll give them top marks for what I call crisis management. They got money into people's pockets pretty quick, albeit probably a little bit too quick because there were some interesting organisations around the country that claimed the damn thing. But what we're going to need on the other side is a lot more than crisis management. We're going to have to get this economy back on track because we're going to see unemployment that's going to be double digit. Maori Pacific unemployment is likely to be in excess of 20%. Now, if we do not get the unemployment rate back down, we're going to have an absolute social crisis on the other side. So the priority has got to be about getting growth. And one of my concerns at the moment is that whether political ideology is going to get in the way of economic pragmatism in regard to what's going to be needed on the other side. We're going to need some pretty big reform. We're going to need some blue sky thinking. The last thing we're going to want on the other side is ideological driven policy.
Hey, Eon, do you think that we've been dragging the chain a bit getting to level 2? And I'm making the assumption that we go there next week. Should we be there now?
We certainly should be. And I was a bit worried, just having listened at 1 o'clock, that when we will get to level 2, I thought she would have announced today that we were going there on by Monday. But it seems like there's now still got to be other things to consider. So, yeah, look, there's so few. There's 2 people in hospital. I mean, it's frightening. Get on with it.
Cameron, you concur?
Yeah, well, it's a tough balancing act, right? I think we should be at 2, but there's another side to this coin here. If you ever look at Singapore was on top of this thing, and then all of a sudden they weren't. You know, they're back in lockdown part 2. So the worst thing we want is to have to go back up through the alert levels, because I think that'll be an absolute, that'll be turn out the lights for the New Zealand economy. But of course, what we know at the moment is that there's some bloody big hits that have been taken. There's sales and income across the business sector in New Zealand is 700 billion in a year, 60 billion in a month. If your economy's 60% operational, 40% locked down for a month, which is what we were, there's $25 billion in lost earnings. At alert level 3, you know, the lost earnings are about 15 billion in this month. You know, the hits are absolutely massive, and it's a real tough balancing act, because you want to do it right, but of course you want an economy on the other side as well.
Sirion, you're a bloke who's done very well over your business career picking markets and getting the timing of events right. Well, yep. How long do you think this downturn will last? When do we effectively hit rock bottom of the trough or the curve and start the slow climb out, assuming, of course, it is a slow climb? And I might get Cameron to comment again on that, but I want to ask you, when's rock bottom for us? Is it like June, July?
Yeah, it probably is. I mean, but I think different parts of the economy are affected differently. I mean, some people haven't been affected that much at all. I mean, the farming sector, which you know very well, a lot of that is going very well. The only frustration is lack of killing capacity at the meatworks, but that seems to be getting overcome. So it affects different people in different ways. And obviously here in Queenstown, we're greatly affected because we're so dependent on the tourism sector, whereas some of the bigger cities, I think, will recover relatively quickly. But as Cameron has said, the total consequences for the country and the money that's had to be handed out has a long-term detrimental effect, because at the end of the day, you've got to repay the debt.
Cameron, when is rock bottom?
Well, the issue is not when is it rock bottom. The issue is what sort of recovery we're going to see on the other side. And this is where we've got sort of letters of the alphabet. There's the V, there's the U, and there's the L. You know, the V is sort of like the GFC, in hard, rocketing hard, right out the other side, you're back into it. And in that situation, house prices come down, they go right back up, the same with the equity market. You know, the bounce we've seen in equities of late, the market was thinking about a V. You know, now people are starting to think, well, hang on, the after effects of this thing could be around for a while. You know, we could see some pretty significant structural changes across the economy. You know, the rebound might be sharp initially as we go down through the alert levels, but there might be a bit of a slog out the other side. You know, so then you start to think about the U versus the L, and all of a sudden the pace of growth. You know, the economy's a bit more sluggish for a few years to come. You know, some sectors such as tourism, they're obviously an L. You know, they're going to take a long time to recover. You know, the same with the hospitality industry. You know, agriculture hardly sort of missed a beat, so they didn't even experience a V. For the economy as a whole, I think it's a little bit on the south side towards the L of the U.
We'll come back to tourism, because you're both Central Otago people, so you've got a vested interest and a great knowledge on it. Let's talk about, Sirion Edgar, if such a thing is possible, getting back to pre-COVID economic activity. What is the new normal? Will we ever get back to where we were in early 2020?
No, I think we'll see a different economy. I mean, I think people have got more used to online purchasing. We're going to see more of that. I think people are going to be a bit more cautious, even if they haven't themselves been badly affected. They're still going to be a bit wary. And for a lot of people, as Cameron has said, the unemployment levels are frightening, and therefore people just won't have the money to spend. So I think it's going to take a long time, and I don't think some areas will ever go back to where they were. The likelihood of us needing another airport in Queenstown, for example, or Wanaka, is off the radar in my lifetime.
Cameron?
Look, the economy as a whole we'll get back to where we were pre-COVID. I think it's going to take a couple of years. The mix to growth, I think, will be an awful lot different. The international tourism sector, for instance, it's probably going to take a decade. It will take an incredibly long time. And let's be honest, in regard to international tourism, we were probably pushing the boundaries in regard to the volume-based model we were running. It probably wasn't the ideal, and now there's a little bit of time to think a little bit strategically differently about the sort of tourists that we're going to bring in here. But we're going to see there's some great opportunities out of this on the other side in regard to Sanctuary New Zealand. You're bringing down entrepreneurs. Hopefully the government backs off the farmers, gives them a bit of a fair shake. We started to shift the debate towards the urbanites in regard to environmental responsibility. Brand New Zealand. You start to think about the opportunities for aquaculture in New Zealand's big economic exclusive zone. Maybe this is the catalyst for looking at some of those real hard issues across New Zealand. How we use water as a strategic resource. There's an old sort of adage out there: never waste a crisis. Well, we've got one. Let's try to leverage it on the other side for some good.
Look, before we get on to some positives and some opportunities that might arise here, Sir Ian, you're based in Queenstown, as I said before. Cameron, you're a Central Otago lad. Let's face it, international tourism's dead in the foreseeable future. What does that look like, Ian, for the likes of Queenstown and Wanaka?
Yeah, it'll be tough. And I think we will see more domestic tourism. I think people they'll want to do something. They can't leave the country. And so they will travel around there. But that's at a lot lower level. And even when it does recover, I'm with Cameron that we're not going to see the same levels. We're probably going more for quality than quantity because it's going to be more expensive to travel internationally, and people with the carbon credits concerns aren't going to take long-haul flights. So I think we're going to see a better quality of tourists, or higher quality, and so that will help us, but it's going to take a long time.
Cameron, you and I often joke about buying a house in Queenstown if we could afford to. Maybe there's an opportunity there for us.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping. If you look at Queenstown, how did Queenstown perform during the global financial crisis? Prices were down 15 to 20%. During the Asian crisis, they were down about 20. This one's worse than that. So starting position, I think the market's probably going to be down about 30. Now, that sounds like a really big number, but you've got to appreciate how fast Queenstown property has surged over the past decade. It's been absolutely off to the races. So there's always two sides to every coin. There's a seller and a buyer. Doesn't matter what asset class you look at. Someone's getting out or someone's getting in. The only issue is price. And I hope there's going to be some opportunities there on the other side because I'm going to be a buyer. I just hope there's not too many other buyers because that means the price won't come down.
One man's misfortune's another man's good fortune, Ian. So there are going to be buying and business opportunities that COVID-19 will present.
Yeah, and I think particularly obviously what I follow closely is the stock market. It's a very different scenario even to the global financial crisis and certainly the 87 crash, because the companies in most cases are in great shape. They're well capitalised, and if they haven't been well capitalised, there is plenty of opportunity, as we've seen several examples already, like Kathmandu, and that have been able to raise the additional capital. So that way, I think good companies, particularly the utilities, like the Sparks and Chorus, the Gene Taylors, the Meridians and Contacts, those sort of companies, good shape. Demand is still very high. So I think those things will continue to do well and show good returns for people. Property, I think, is going to be more difficult. I think Cameron may be a bit more pessimistic, but there's an awful lot of people in Queenstown in particular who are dependent on Airbnb, and that's obviously going to collapse. So there will be people that suddenly realise they don't need a second property.
Well, let's look at some positives, all right? So the way forward for New Zealand, the way out of this malaise, if you want. Cameron, we talk about pivoting a business. Where should we be looking?
No, I don't think there's any one size all characterisation, but if you look at what was going on pre-COVID, there was an awful lot of disruption. The move towards online shopping, different technology-based platforms. Some firms were embracing technology, some weren't. And a lot of levels, COVID is just a bit of a lightning bolt to tell us to wake up, because what we're going to see is obviously an acceleration in online shopping. We're doing the trial now in regard to working from home. Well, it works for a lot of people. A lot of people are going to want to go rushing back into the office. A lot aren't. What's that going to mean for commercial property demand on the other side? You can go through a big list of structural changes that are going to go on. You have a look at where the tech companies have been doing in the United States out of this, likes of Zoom, Apple, Google, these sort of guys. They're going pretty damn well because we're embracing technology. But of course, a lot of your traditional parts of your economy, your Main Street sort of stuff, your retailing, well, a bit of a wake-up call in regard to going forward. Commercial property's taken a bit of a hammering in regard to that sector as well. Other sectors, anything that sort of supplies food, is holding up pretty well. All the seafood-based companies, markets are looking reasonably healthy. They're still operating pretty well at capacity. So, they're signalling their earnings are going to hold up okay. So there's always opportunities out of this on the other side.
So, Sirion, you've been pretty good at picking markets over your lifetime. Where are you going to pivot to?
This new trendy word, pivoting. I'm exactly where Cameron is. I think online is going well. I think opportunities in that tech sector. I think there's going to be companies that will want to relocate or have a bigger presence here because of it's a good place to attract young, talented people. So I think there's going to be good opportunities in that area to help them. And I got the same view as Cameron, that we're going to see a change. We're never going to come back. It's just been accelerated.
Eon, I've used pivoting. I could have used learnings or the new one, talking, so at least I've spared you that. Hey, let's talk about something that I actually know a wee bit about, probably not as much as you two, but I try and make a living talking it. How important, I'll go back to you, Cameron, is the primary sector going to be? Farming, forestry, in our economic recovery?
Well, it's going to be hellishly important. There's been a lot of focus on tourism, probably too much focus on tourism in the past 5 to 6 years, and some of the numbers they were putting up in regard to what they thought they were going to get out of that sector for the next 5 years were pie-in-the-sky stuff, irrespective of COVID. New Zealand, when you break it down, is still one big farm. The backbone of the New Zealand economy. Some parts of it, such as dairying, they've got a few challenges. They got too much debt. 60% of dairy farmers are paying interest only. They're not actually paying back the debt. Now, that's a fundamental problem. So that sector, the farm values have been going backwards, tough conversations. Well, I think the banks going forward have probably got a few bigger problems in other sectors of the economy at the moment, so you can probably leave the dairy guys alone because they've got some cash. An awful lot of other sectors don't have cash flow, particularly in the commercial property market. We could see some wonderful opportunities out of this. We're seeing that the food supply chain, meat processors in America are shutting down because they don't have COVID under control. So all of a sudden, you think about your rule number one in any government around the globe at the moment is make sure people have got food on the table. We've got the potential here where the food on the table in big countries such as America could be facing a few challenges the longer this thing lingers around. You start to think about what is that going to mean opportunity-wise. Normally, when you go through a global shock like this, you see commodity prices fall through the floor. What do we see in regard to dairy prices the other night? They were basically flat. And that's a hellishly good number given the environment. There's potential for red meat prices to go up if these shortages in the United States become real problematic.
Sirion, you wanted to be a farmer originally.
I certainly did, but unfortunately my uncle had a son or two sons, so I missed out. But no, look, I'm again agree with Cameron that the farming sector is the key. Not only the farming, the horticulture, the seafood area. We all have basic advantages there. You know, good land, good, and I think the farming sector will just go from strength to strength. I think there is going to have to be still a tightening up on some of our water waste situations, but let's give it time. There's no hurry to do these things. We just need to get on and make sure we're earning good export dollars, which that whole rural sector can do for us.
Okay, guys, we're going to wrap this with a couple of more questions, should I say? And I'll go back to you, Cameron. You get first bite at this one, and don't duck for cover for me. If an election is indeed held on September the 19th, that's about 4.5 months away from where we are at the moment, what might a winning coalition government look like?
At the moment, I think the incumbents get back in, and purely because they're getting all the airtime. Getting airtime.
So you're saying Labor, New Zealand First coalition?
No, I think we'll end up with the same combination we've got today.
Sorry, on Edgar?
Well, firstly, I think they should delay the election for a year because for two reasons. One, I think that would allow people to see whether what Labor is proposing does actually get us out of this malaise, and then we might look to go on to 4-year elections. So I think this is the chance to delay it. But I would agree with Cameron, if it still goes ahead in September, and obviously probably Labor wants it to, then I think they will probably be able to govern with only one of the Greens and New Zealand First. I don't think they'll need them both.
I put it to you that New Zealand farming would be a lot better off with a Labor New Zealand First coalition than a Labor Greens one, Cameron. That could be deadly.
Certainly would.
Yes. Yeah.
No argument from either of you.
Yeah, I'm normally not a big fan of Winston, and I don't like what he said about the manufacturing sector, but the Northport idea is just ridiculous. But I'll tell you what, he's been coming out with some pretty pragmatic statements at the moment in regard to how we need to think about this. Getting that right balance between healthcare versus making sure you've still got an economy that ain't broke. So he's been striking a real good middle line, and that's nice to see because we need that middle line. We don't want the far left or the far right. Those are the trouble lines.
Couldn't agree more.
Final question for you. Who's looking forward to getting back to Forsyth Bar Stadium? I'm a huge fan. I know you two are both sports nuts. Sirion, you've got your company's name on the side of the stadium there. So how keen are you to get back for the Highlanders? The Highlanders, the All Blacks, or even Lady Gaga? How good would that be?
Oh, fantastic. No, I can't wait. And I am concerned that how much atmosphere there'll be if they play these games in empty stadiums. What she was, Jacinda was saying, maximum of 100 people. Well, I just hope we can get back that we can have decent-sized crowd. I mean, it's the best place to watch rugby. As Sir Bill Beaumont said, it's the best place to watch rugby in the world, in his view. So I think the sooner we can get back to having events at the stadium, the better for our economy, and particularly the Dunedin economy. It's so important. We're not going to have many cruise ships, so the sooner we can get the stadium up and running again, the better for all of us.
Yeah, Cameron, you're a Central Otago boy. The team at Dunedin Venues are very keen to host you, seeing you've kindly given us some of your time today. What event would you like to go to? Oh,
I was dying to come down for the Scotland game. I thought that would have been the test match of the year. And every time there's a test match down at Dunedin, it's sort of like a bit of a calling from all these old ex-Otago students. We're all sort of getting on a little bit now in age. And, of course, the Friday night tends to be better than the Saturday night.
That's because you wear yourself out on the Friday night, Cameron.
The Scottish test would have been fantastic, wouldn't it? And looks like it won't happen. Let's hope they delay it and we have it the following year. But I'm with Cameron. the atmosphere with the Scots and this, the sort of the Otago heritage would have made a wonderful atmosphere.
Hey, this video or Zoom video is going out to all the members at Forsyth Bar. We're doing this for the team at Dunedin Venues. They've got a bit of a battle on their hands at the moment with not much business happening. But Sirion, how proud are you of that stadium and what it's done for this city and this region?
Oh, unbelievably proud, and great credit to Malcolm Farry. Lucky to be part of that team. It's a total game changer. I mean, best stadium in New Zealand, you never get a bad match, and the ability to attract, whether it's the Elton Johns, all those acts, they've just had such great support. The flow into Dunedin is enormous. So, no, very proud, and it'll only get better.
Well, thank you too very much for your time. We'll get together next time there is an event at the stadium, and I reckon we should stop off for a pint of Emerson's Pilsner on the way. I won't get an argument from you, will I, Cameron?
No, you won't.
No.
Might have to be a Central Otago Pinot.
Yeah.
Sirion and Cameron Bagri, thank you very much for your time. On behalf of the team at Dunedin Venues, I'd like to thank you. And to all you members at Forsyth Bar Stadium, keep the faith. See you lads.
Thanks very much.
Take care.